I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Today is the day that I review the SkyZone Sky 030. This is the new OLED goggle from SkyZone. Until now, Fat Shark was the only one making OLED screen goggles, and people are saying that the SkyZone looks better than the Fat Shark HDO. And I think they're right. It might surprise you to learn that my daily driver goggle is not the top-of-the-line Fat Shark HDO. It's the Fat Shark HD3. And if you watch my review of the Fat Shark HDO, you'll see why. The Fat Shark HDO is the first Fat Shark goggle and the first FPV goggle to have an OLED screen in it, and OLED screens objectively have much better image quality than the LCD screens that have been used in other goggles. But when I put the Fat Shark HDOs on my face for the very first time, I was not blown away. So when I heard that the SkyZone Sky 030 had an OLED screen in it, I didn't immediately assume that it was going to knock my socks off. But it did. These goggles, I put these goggles on my face and I thought, oh, it looks okay. It looks pretty good. And I flew a couple packs with these goggles, and then I put my HD3s on, and I could not believe how much worse the image looked on these HD3s. Like, not just subjectively in terms of beauty, but in terms of my ability to actually see and discern detail that let me fly. And I got to tell you, that was the reaction that Fat Shark wanted me to have when I put the HDOs on my face, and I just didn't have it. How could the SkyZones? No disrespect, SkyZone's always made a solid goggle, a good-looking goggle, but I just was not expecting them to knock my freaking socks off like they did. And I said to myself, okay, well, I guess I'm done with my HD3s. Sorry, that's all the proof I needed. So I guess I'm going to switch to HDOs. I had to compare them to HDOs. So I bought a brand new set of HDOs, so I could be absolutely sure that I was doing a fair comparison of these goggles in their best possible state. And I've compared the HDOs to the SkyZones, and the SkyZones look better. They are much brighter. They have darker blacks. They have all of the things that I was supposed to see when I put the Fat Shark HDOs on my head, comparing them to the older LCD goggles. This is the best looking FPV goggle I have ever seen. Now, there is no substitute for putting this goggle on your face and seeing for yourself what it actually looks like. But since a lot of you guys aren't going to be able to do that, at least not without buying the goggles, I have done the next best thing, which is to stick a GoPro into the eyepiece of the goggle. The GoPro is recording at 4K resolution. I've adjusted the exposure so we get consistent exposure, and I'm going to do my best to talk you through the aspects of this that I think you really should pay attention to. I feel a little bit bad that some of you are going to take what I think at least are the wrong impressions, because these are still images captured with a camera. But we're going to do our best, and we're going to get through this. And what I want to start with is how freaking bright the image is on the SkyZones. So you're looking at the SkyZones right now. Let's compare to the Fat Shark HDO. Here is what the HDO looks like, and nothing has changed about the camera between these two. The exposure settings are identical, and I don't know if it's coming across to you because, like, the camera is recording the goggle and then you're playing the image back on your screen. But when you actually put these goggles on your face, the difference in brightness, in vibrance between the SkyZone and the HDO, the HDO just looks so sort of muted and dull. And that continues to be true even if we adjust the brightness and contrast settings on the Fat Shark. So here I'm turning the brightness up. The image is getting blown out, but the image as a whole is not getting brighter. And I want to be really clear here that this is not a case where, like, the Fat Shark has a lower contrast panel, but it has, like, more highlight detail and more shadow detail. The SkyZone has just as much shadow and highlight detail as the Fat Shark. It just has a brighter panel, darker blacks, brighter whites. It just has a better panel. Hey, Joshua from the future here. As I'm editing this video, I see that, like, if you look at the fence in the upper right corner of the screen, on the SkyZone, the highlights on that fence look like they're blown out, whereas on the Fat Shark, they are not. I'm going to have to ask you to take my word for it that that is because of the exposure setting on the GoPro that's recording this, that is not what I remember it looking like in the screen. And unfortunately, that is one of the consequences of trying to convey this stuff to you via an imperfect medium. By way of demonstrating that, here's what happens when you turn down the luminance on the OLED panel in the SkyZone to its lowest level. You can see those details come back in. Those details were still there when the screen was turned up to a 3. It's just that the GoPro itself was being overexposed. As long as we're here, it's worth pointing out that the brightness on the SkyZone panel can be turned way higher up. Again, the GoPro is being blown out here, but the detail on the SkyZone panel is preserved. You can have it as bright or as dim as you want without really significantly affecting the dynamic range. Going back to the side-by-side here, the other feature of the SkyZone that has to be called out is the sharpening. And I want to be clear that this sharpening is not coming from the camera. This sharpening is coming from the SkyZone itself. So look at the tree on the sort of middle left-hand side of the screen. There is a white sort of halo outline around the tree. And if you look in the tree branches on the SkyZone, they're speckled with white, whereas on the Fat Shark, that stuff is just not there. That is sharpening, and a lot of people don't like an over-sharpened image. I don't like an over-sharpened image, but I got to tell you, while I was flying, I found this to be helpful. I found that when I did a side-by-side with the SkyZone and the Fat Shark, I felt like I was flying better and seeing more useful details with the SkyZone than with the Fat Shark. It's weird to hear myself saying that, because I'll be the first one to turn sharpening down on every camera that I get to get a more natural looking image. I felt like it worked. Now the SkyZone does have a setting where you can adjust the sharpening from 1 to 8 or whatever, and I did play with this setting, and I found it, I couldn't even figure out, I don't know, maybe you got to power cycle the goggles afterwards. It was just weird and didn't seem to really make any difference. So if you hate that sharpening, then that might be a thing that would steer you away from the SkyZones. Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with SkyZone goggles, but in case you're new here, let's take a little run around these goggles and see what they bring to the table. And the first thing you'll notice is they have a built-in diversity receiver module, so no Fat Shark modules, no Owl RC, TBS Fusion, Rapid Fire, etc. You're going to be using this built-in module. This is one of the biggest complaints about the SkyZone goggles, and more than one person has said, these goggles look so freaking good, I would switch to them, except I love Rapid Fire too much, and I'm willing to give up a little bit of image quality to use Rapid Fire. SkyZone is acknowledging this, and they're actually working on like a plastic housing that snaps to the side and lets you plug in a Rapid Fire module or any other module that you prefer to use. That's to be determined. It will add a little bit of bulk to the goggles, but maybe that's going to be a good solution for some of you guys. The SkyZones have a really comprehensive interface. All of the functions are accessible from buttons here on the top, and everything you want to do is accessible from within the goggle. You really never have to take these goggles off your face. That's pretty nice compared to something like the Fat Shark, where some of the modules will put stuff in the OSD. It's a little klooched together, though. The SkyZone has a very nice interface. One of the complaints I have about it, though, is that the function of the buttons is very confusing. It's very contextual, and it takes a little bit of time to like figure out, oh, this button does this, that button does that, how to move through the menus and how to get to all the functions you want. I wish they did a better job of that, but they're kind of making the most of what they have. They don't want to add 17 different buttons, so they kind of double up the functions on all the buttons. If you own them, you'll get used to it, you'll figure out how to use it, and you won't ever think of it again. One of the complaints about earlier versions of the SkyZones was that the faceplate didn't fit some people very well. Specifically, the faceplate that came on it was very shallow, and a lot of people specifically a lot of Westerners who apparently have a slightly different shaped face than the Asian people that were used to fit the goggles and design the goggles. A lot of Westerners felt that there was too much pressure on the nose and light leak at the temples. To fix that, SkyZone has released these goggles with not one, but two different faceplates. And there is a standard flat faceplate that fits the contour of the goggles, and that would be for people with, let's just say, people with flatter faces. And this faceplate here has just a little bit of a wedge that gives just a little bit more of an angle, and that for people with like more curved faces, it helps them fit. I don't have any issue with light leak using the standard faceplate foam that came with it. Be aware, if you do get this, that there are two sets of faceplate foam in here, and they are not the same. Each different faceplate has a different shape of foam. So if you're trying to put the faceplate foam on and it's not really sticking, you're probably using the wrong one. On the bottom of the goggle, we have a rich assortment of inputs and outputs. There's an HDMI input, so you can use it with a computer if you want to run a simulator. You can also use it with a high-definition ground station eventually when such a thing comes out, Fat Shark Bite Frost. AV in, AV out, SD card slot, headphones, and USB jack. Over here on the other side, we've got an output for a head tracker. It does have a built-in head tracker if you use that kind of thing, and there's a DC input. And famously, well, of course, I'm not going to let you get through this video without a range comparison. So here's a head-to-head of the Sky 030 versus the Owl RC module in the Fat Shark HDO. And this will also give you a chance to see what a moving image looks like, not just a static image. We are in a very high multipath environment. When I'm inside this big metal building, look for the signature flickers of multipath interference. And as I go through this segment behind this brick wall, you can see the overall sensitivity of the module, just how sensitive it is to raw signal strength. We are at 25 milliwatts here to make the modules work as hard as possible without having to fly the quad of half a mile down the road, but I think you should get a very, very good sense of how these two devices perform. And normally I would try not to like skew the results for you and let you decide for yourself, but I feel like it's pretty obvious that the SkyZone is not doing as good a job as even the Owl RC module, which is we're going to compare it to the Rapid Fire in a second, and it's going to do even worse, but there you go. Now, normally, one might consider it unfair to compare a diversity module like the SkyZone to what I think is really just the undisputed champ, the Rapid Fire. But in this case, I think it's really relevant because for a lot of people, the question of whether to get the SkyZone is going to boil down to, do I want probably the best looking screen, or do I want the best RF performance? And the question is, how much do you give up in terms of RF performance if you go with the SkyZone versus the Rapid Fire? More about, could you not just use the Rapid Fire with the SkyZone? No, more about that a little later in the video. Again, I normally try not to skew the results, but I think it's really clear. Here in the building, you just don't see any of those multipath flickers on the Rapid Fire. It's just completely crushing them. And when we fly around the outside of the building, the Rapid Fire has less breakup and just way more sensitivity overall. The Rapid Fire kills this one. The question is whether you would be happy. Bear in mind, this is 25 milliwatts. If we were at 800 milliwatts, we'd be doing pretty good on the SkyZone in this environment. You have to decide for yourself. So that brings us to the end of the video, and as always, the question, should you buy it? And if you looked at the thumbnail for this video, Game Changer, and you thought, wow, that's a little clickbaity. Joshua doesn't usually do that. You're right. I don't usually do just big clickbait, but I mean it this time. This is a freaking game changer in the FPV goggle market, because here's the thing. There's a ton of goggles at the $300 price point, all of which struggle and give up something to get to the $300 price point. The Fat Shark Attitude V5, OLED goggles, yay! But they have a weird aspect ratio and resolution, and I don't know why, Fat Shark. So to see a goggle this freaking good at a price point of $429, that's not going to be the right goggle for everybody, but for some people, this is going to be an absolute no freaking brainer. Because if you compare this to the Fat Shark HDO, Fat Shark HDO is right now about $450. You're going to spend at least $50 on a module and maybe probably closer to $80 or $90. So let's say that the base price for the Fat Shark HDO with a module is going to come in around $550. This is more than $100 cheaper than the Fat Shark HDO. It has a way better looking image. The range is not as good. The usability is excellent. The fit is excellent. It's got even got a thick freaking head strap. This is a freaking good goggle for $429. On the other hand, though, it's a real struggle because there is no question in my mind that RapidFire is the best RF module you can get. It has just the best performance. That I'm just sold on that. So do I have to give up a little bit in terms of image quality in order to get the best module, or do I get the best looking goggle but not the best RF performance? I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't. But you can answer that question for yourself and spend your own money as you see fit. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for a top-of-the-line goggle, then think about whether the Fat Shark HDO plus RapidFire is the right thing for you. If you're looking for the best-looking goggle, but maybe not the RF performance, the Sky 030 is just completely where it's at today. If you can't quite get to $429, then there are many $300 goggles. I've got a video reviewing all the $300 goggles on the market right now. I'll link it down in the video description. And don't forget, coming soon is the Orca FPV-1 if you just have all the money in the world to spend, which, I mean, it's definitely going to have a bigger, higher resolution screen than the Skyzone, but will it look better? I don't know. These are really good looking. We'll have to wait and see. And, of course, if you have all the money in the world, you just get DJI. The DJI goggles look really freaking good, but of course you have to refit all your quads with a DJI Air unit in order to do it, and that's a whole nother story. So that's how it breaks down. Thank you, Skyzone. Thank you, Skyzone. This is the first Skyzone goggle that I've felt like just is a clear winner at a certain price point. There's just nothing that competes with this at the $400-ish price point. So if that's where you're at, this is the one to get. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy flying.